What if the man who loves you the most isn't the one declaring it with grand rehearsed words, but the one revealing it through quiet, almost imperceptible moments? What if his love isn't hidden, but simply spoken in a language you were never taught to recognize? Many women wait to hear the words, "I love you," as if that phrase alone can anchor their sense of security. But what if I told you that love, real, deep, enduring love, is rarely that obvious? That sometimes the most devoted man is the one who doesn't flood you with poetic declarations, but who instead whispers his love through acts of presence, vulnerability, and shared silence. And yet how many times have you dismissed a man's deeper affection because it didn't come packaged in the language you were conditioned to expect? In a world where emotional neglect often wears the mask of stoicism, and where many men were raised to fear the exposure of their own tenderness, love finds quieter ways to speak, through phrases that carry weight beyond their syllables, through language that bypasses the romantic script and touches something more primal, more real. This video is not about decoding manipulation. It's not about chasing validation or learning tricks to feel wanted. It's about something deeper, more enduring. It's about helping you recognize when a man is emotionally invested in you, not just through what he feels, but through what he chooses to express. Freud once said that much of human communication is unconscious, that the truth of a feeling often leaks through the cracks of our most ordinary words. In this sense, love is often revealed not in the proclamations, but in the pauses, not in the drama, but in the consistency. So today we'll explore 5 phrases that may seem simple, but when spoken with sincerity, carry the unmistakable weight of profound love. And as we unfold each one, I invite you to not only listen, but to remember. Has anyone ever said these words to you? And if they did you truly hear them? Let's begin with the first phrase, a phrase that signals emotional investment beyond romance, beyond ego. A phrase that says, "I'm not just with you, I admire who you are." Now let's move to "I'm proud of you." There's a kind of intimacy that isn't born in the bedroom or on candlelit dates, but in the silent witnessing of your becoming. When a man looks at you, not to possess, not to fix, not to compete, but simply to admire your growth, he's speaking a language of love that many women never learned to recognize. I'm proud of you. 4 words. Yet for a man who grew up equating vulnerability with weakness, these words represent something radical: emotional exposure. When he says this, he's not merely complimenting you. He's aligning himself with your journey. Your wins feel like his wins, not because he needs credit, but because his sense of connection to you is real. In Freudian terms, this reflects a form of psychological identification, a mechanism through which the boundary between self and other becomes fluid. When a man says he's proud of you, he isn't just observing your success from the outside. He feels it from within. Your courage strengthens him. Your evolution inspires him. It's a merging, not of control, but of admiration. Now pause for a moment. How many times in your life has someone truly seen you, not just for what you've done, but for who you had to become to do it? A man who says he's proud of you is a man who pays attention. He noticed when you set the boundary you used to be afraid to draw. He felt your courage when you left a situation that no longer honored your worth. He heard the tremble in your voice when you spoke your truth, and still, he stayed close, emotionally present, and deeply moved. Too many women, especially those shaped by abandonment or criticism in childhood, have internalized a dangerous message, that their worth must be earned, proved, or sacrificed for. When you've spent a lifetime walking on emotional eggshells, being told that your dreams are too big or your feelings too loud, even a simple "I'm proud of you" can feel foreign, unreachable, undeserved. But it is deserved. And when a man offers you that phrase without irony, without condition, he is in essence saying, "I see your fight, I honor your evolution, you don't need to shrink to be loved by me." Freud might interpret this as the breaking of a repetition compulsion, the unconscious drive to repeat early wounds in our adult relationships. When a man loves you from a place of pride instead of criticism, your nervous system begins to unlearn the pattern of bracing for rejection. Your inner child, the one who once cried for recognition, finally hears it. It's easy to overlook this kind of love because it doesn't always come with grand gestures. It might arrive in a quiet voice after you share a small victory, a simple "I'm proud of you" said while folding laundry, or whispered at the end of a long day. But in that moment, he's not just acknowledging your actions, he's reinforcing your inner transformation. Now ask yourself gently, have you dismissed the praise you've received, brushing it off as nothing, because you were taught to doubt it? Have you been so conditioned to chase attention that when real admiration comes, you barely notice? Because the man who says, "I'm proud of you," is not playing a role. He's revealing a part of himself that wants to witness, not own, your light. From this place of genuine admiration, another phrase often emerges, less about recognition and more about action. The kind of phrase that says, "I'm not just watching you live, I want to support you in it." Let's move now to the next sign of deep love. How can I help? There is a tenderness in this question that often goes unnoticed, not because it's small, but because it's rare. In a culture where many relationships are still shaped by performance, where women are expected to be strong, composed, endlessly giving, this phrase breaks the rhythm of emotional labor being one-sided. "How can I help?" is not just a polite offer. When spoken with sincerity, it's a declaration of partnership. It reveals something fundamental about how a man sees you, not as someone to be impressed or controlled, but as someone he wants to stand beside in the real work of life. It is easy to offer help when it's convenient, but a man who asks this question consistently, especially when things are messy, uncertain, or emotionally charged, is doing something deeper. He is surrendering the myth of masculine invulnerability. He is opening space for shared responsibility, shared discomfort, and shared healing. From a psychological lens, this behavior reflects a transition from ego-centric love, which is transactional and self-serving, to mature, companionate love, which is rooted in empathy, reciprocity, and action. Freud might say that this marks a shift from instinctual gratification to relational sublimation, where raw desires are redirected into something meaningful and sustaining. When a man says, "How can I help?" he is attuning to your experience. He is moving beyond his own narrative to enter yours, not as a savior, but as a witness and ally. He is saying, in effect, "Your well-being matters to me, not just in words, but in deeds." But here's the painful truth. Many women don't know how to receive that question, not because they're ungrateful, but because they've been conditioned to carry everything alone, to expect abandonment, to believe that asking for help is weakness, or worse, that it will cost them love. So when help is offered without demand, without strings, it can trigger something unexpected: fear, doubt, suspicion. Why is he being so kind? What does he want in return? This reaction isn't irrational, it's protective. When you've survived emotional neglect, betrayal, or manipulation, real support can feel like a trap. But that's where your healing begins, in recognizing that not all help is control, that some hands are extended not to bind you but to lift you. There's a story, symbolic perhaps, of a woman who had been self-sufficient her entire life. Raised in chaos, she learned early that the only person she could trust was herself. She built walls, routines, armor. And then one day, she met someone different. He didn't try to fix her. He didn't praise her strength while secretly expecting her to carry the weight. He simply asked, "How can I help?" At first, she froze. Then she deflected. Then eventually she allowed herself to say something she hadn't said in decades. "I don't know, but thank you for asking." And that moment, small, quiet, was a turning point, because love is not just about receiving affection. It's about being safe enough to not have all the answers, to not be perfect, to be supported even when you're unsure. Freud might interpret this shift as the beginning of trust in the therapeutic alliance, a fundamental cornerstone in healing. When someone shows up for you consistently, even when you're not at your best, your nervous system begins to learn. Connection can be safe. I can need and still be loved. So the next time someone says, "How can I help?" listen closely, not just to their words, but to your own resistance. That question, simple as it is, may be the doorway to a different kind of intimacy. One where love doesn't just watch you suffer, it dares to stand beside you in it. And from that place of emotional maturity, another powerful phrase often arises, a phrase that demands the surrender of pride and the embrace of vulnerability. Let's continue with, "I'm sorry." To apologize is not merely to admit a mistake. It is to expose the soft underbelly of the ego, the part that wants to be right, to win, to maintain control, and to choose connection instead. When a man says, "I'm sorry," and means it, he's not just responding to a moment of conflict. He's revealing the depth of his emotional investment in you. Freud spoke often of sublimation, the psychological process by which instinctual drives are redirected toward more socially or emotionally constructive ends. When a man apologizes sincerely, especially in moments where silence or defensiveness would be easier, he is sublimating pride into intimacy. He is saying, "This relationship matters more than my image of being flawless," and that is no small thing. Because many men, conditioned by generations of emotional repression, struggle to see an apology as anything other than defeat. To say "I'm sorry" requires an internal reckoning, a confrontation with guilt, with shame, with the fear of losing respect. But mature love doesn't seek dominance, it seeks repair. There's a moment in many women's lives where they learn to stop expecting an apology, not because they don't deserve one, but because they've spent years receiving silence instead. Some of you watching may know what it feels like to cry in front of someone who refuses to soften, to explain your pain over and over, only to be told you're too sensitive, overreacting, or simply ignored. So when a man looks you in the eyes and says, "I'm sorry," without deflecting, minimizing, or rushing, you are witnessing something sacred. He is dismantling a generational inheritance of emotional avoidance. He is choosing to be accountable, not performatively, but from the gut. A real apology sounds like, "I didn't mean to hurt you, but I see that I did, and I want to understand better." It is rooted in presence, not perfection. It doesn't erase the pain, but it acknowledges it, and in doing so, it opens the possibility for healing. Freud might interpret the genuine apology as the moment when the superego, the internal voice of conscience, overrides the defensive mechanisms of the ego. In a healthy psyche, love makes space for vulnerability, and vulnerability makes space for truth. In this way, "I'm sorry" becomes not just a repair, but a rebirth. Now you may ask yourself, have I ever been with someone who never apologized? And deeper still, did I learn to apologize for things that were never my fault just to maintain peace? Because when you've been made to carry the emotional weight of a relationship, a sincere apology can feel almost disorienting. It might stir grief. It might awaken the ache of all the "I'm sorries" you never received from people who should have protected you. But this is what healing looks like. It's not always light and soft. Sometimes it comes in the form of a man owning his impact, not because he's weak, but because he is strong enough to face it. A man who says "I'm sorry" is a man who chooses to stay close, even when it costs him his comfort. And when that kind of emotional honesty is present, the future stops feeling like a vague idea and starts taking shape in real, grounded terms. A man who can own his mistakes is often the same man who can envision something lasting, with you, not just around you. And that brings us to the next phrase, a sign of emotional security and shared vision. "I see a future with you." This phrase may sound romantic at first, even idyllic, but its true power lies not in fantasy, but in responsibility. When a man says, "I see a future with you," he's not just speaking of a distant dream, he's revealing a deep emotional decision to include you in the architecture of his life. In Freud's time, the idea of love was often tangled with need, desire, projection. But beneath all of that was this truth: the future is the greatest stage of our unconscious hopes and fears. When someone speaks of a shared future, they are not merely imagining possibilities, they are extending trust. They are choosing permanence over impulse. In modern behavioral terms, this phrase reflects a stable attachment style, a psychological state where emotional safety, consistency, and intimacy are prioritized over avoidance or chaos. It signals not just desire, but deliberation. The desire to build, not just to experience. Because love is not measured by intensity, it's measured by continuity, by how someone holds you in the ordinary seasons of life, not just the poetic ones. Let's pause here and name something important. For many women, this phrase has been weaponized. You may have heard a version of it used as bait, as manipulation. "We'll be together someday, just not now. I see us married, but first I need to find myself." Empty promises are not visions, they are tools of delay. But when a man genuinely sees a future with you, it will be felt in the way he lives in the present. He will make space for your voice. He will factor your needs into his decisions. He will not fear the slow-building rituals of a shared life. he will welcome them. A man who includes you in his future is not just thinking aloud. He's creating structure. He is allowing his habits, his environment, his choices to bend around the idea of us rather than me. Freud might describe this as the reconciliation between the id, which seeks pleasure, and the superego, which demands structure. In mature love, the future becomes a container where passion is preserved by commitment. It's not about stifling freedom. It's about evolving into a version of self that makes space for another, without collapse. Think about it. When a man says, "I see a future with you," he is, in a sense, seeing himself become. He is not just imagining who you will be together, but who he will need to become in order to love you well. And that is the mark of someone who doesn't just love you today, but who is preparing to love you tomorrow. So ask yourself quietly, has anyone ever made you feel like a placeholder, like something temporary, convenient, seasonal? And then consider, what would it feel like to be included, not as a fantasy, but as a co-author of a life that's being built day by day? A shared future is not a promise of perfection, but it is a promise of presence. It is a refusal to love only when it's easy. It is the decision to remain, to grow, to hold. And from that kind of devotion, from that kind of deep emotional territory, comes perhaps the most vulnerable phrase of all. A phrase that says, "Even when I can't explain it, I feel it." Let's continue with the final expression of profound love. I love you in ways I can't explain. There is a point in every deep emotional bond where words fail, where language, shaped by logic and sequence, becomes too narrow a vessel for the vastness of feeling. When a man says, "I love you in ways I can't explain," he is not being vague. He is being honest. He is admitting that his love for you exists beyond articulation, in the quiet places of the unconscious, where even he is still learning to understand himself. This is not confusion. It's not a lack of clarity or intention. It is a moment of emotional humility, a recognition that something in him has been moved, softened, rearranged by your presence, in ways that defy simple description. Freud, in his study of the unconscious, often spoke of the return of the repressed, those forces within us that influence our behavior without ever being fully seen. Love, especially when it is real, touches those depths. It awakens parts of the psyche we cannot name. It resurrects longings, fears, memories, some tender, some terrifying. And for a man who has spent much of his life disconnected from those inner waters, to feel love this deep is both overwhelming and transformative. So when he says, "I love you in ways I can't explain," he may be revealing not a limitation but a rupture, a break in his defenses. It's a way of saying, "I don't know how to name this, but I know it's true." For many women, especially those who have lived through emotionally sterile relationships where affection was performative, transactional, or cold, this phrase can bring up doubt. What do you mean you can't explain it? Why not just say it more clearly? But love is not always logical, and neither is healing. Some emotions exist before language, before thought. They live in the body. They surface as sensations, a quiet stillness when you're near, a calming of the nervous system in your presence, a feeling of home, not because everything is easy, but because something in you feels seen. This is the kind of love that defies templates. It is not a checklist. It is not built for display. It often arrives quietly, in gestures too subtle to showcase, too intimate to translate. And when it's real, when it's truly rooted in the unconscious, it carries an intensity that frightens the emotionally avoidant. It demands self-confrontation. It asks, who am I becoming in the presence of this woman? What does her love awaken in me that I have never dared to face? Freud might interpret this moment as the tension between desire and fear, between the longing to merge and the terror of losing oneself in another. But a man who can sit with this tension and still stay, still love, still try, is a man in the process of emotional individuation. He is choosing to feel, even when the feeling cannot be packaged. This phrase, "I love you in ways I can't explain," may come at unexpected times, in the quiet of a long drive, at the end of a hard conversation, in the soft murmur of a half-asleep moment. It is not meant to solve or impress. It is a confession, an offering, a truth. So if you've heard these words from someone, don't rush to decode them. Sit with them, let them echo, because sometimes the deepest love doesn't come in perfect lines. It comes in presence, in effort, in the vulnerability of someone who was never taught how to love and chooses to learn anyway. From these 5 phrases, each one revealing a unique facet of emotional depth, we begin to see a pattern, a map, a different kind of emotional fluency that goes far beyond charm or performance. Let us now bring all these pieces together in our final chapter. When we strip away the drama, the fantasy, the chase, what remains is something quieter yet infinitely more powerful: presence. The man who deeply loves you may not flood your life with poetry or extravagant gestures. He may not always find the right words at the right time, but he will show you, in fragments of language and consistent action, that his love is not a performance, it is a commitment. I'm proud of you. How can I help? I'm sorry. I see a future with you. I love you in ways I can't explain. These aren't just phrases. They are behavioral markers of emotional maturity. They are signs that a man is not relating to you from ego, impulse, or need, but from connection, reflection, and truth. And the truth is, deep love is rarely loud. It is rooted, steady, brave enough to be ordinary. Freud might say that love becomes truly transformative when it shifts from a projection of your needs to a co-creation of meaning. And that's what these phrases represent. Not idealized romance, but real psychological integration. The kind of love that doesn't rescue you but walks beside you. That doesn't erase your pain but respects it. That doesn't rush to fix but chooses to stay, even when staying is hard. So now pause and ask yourself, have I been listening for the wrong words? Have I overlooked devotion because it didn't sound like the fairy tales I was told? Because here's the hard truth. Many women have been conditioned to expect declarations, but to settle for inconsistency, to confuse passion with possession, to interpret silence as strength. But when a man consistently speaks with care, with accountability, with presence, he is showing you something that most will never put into words. I'm here. I see you. I'm choosing you. That is what love looks like when it matures, not as a feeling, but as a series of choices. And each of these phrases is a doorway to that kind of love. So if you've heard any of them, pause. Remember, let yourself feel their weight. And if you haven't, don't shame yourself. Don't convince yourself that you've asked for too much. What you're seeking is not fantasy. It's emotional alignment. It's safety. It's real. The woman you are becoming does not wait for perfect words. She learns to listen beneath them, to notice how he shows up when no one's watching, to value not just the intensity of his affection, but the integrity of his presence, because that is where the truth lives. Now I want to hear from you. Have you heard any of these phrases from someone special? What did they mean to you? Leave a comment below and share your experience, because your story may be the mirror another woman needs. And if this video gave you clarity, subscribe and stay close. We're not here to chase love, we're here to understand it.